Whale and dolphin captivity is quite the controversial issue, as there are people who are advocating for the release of every marine mammal that is captive orca, dolphin, seal, sea lion, even manatees, to improve their overall health and get them back in the wild. And then there are people who think that these animals are treated well in marine parks and offer a great way for humans to make a connection to help the conservation of marine mammals. So the question is, on which side should you fall, and how do you make that decision? These are just some of the questions that you may ask yourself when the opportunity presents itself to either see an orca or some other marine mammal in captivity, or maybe even in the wild, or if somebody's just bringing it up in conversation. So in this podcast, in this episode, I'm going to give you some resources that can help you make decisions for yourself so that you can live for a better ocean. That's on this episode of How to Protect the Ocean. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and how you can live for a better ocean by taking action. And today we're going to be talking about one of those actions, and that is really, how do you make the decisions on whether you should support whale captivity or marine mammal captivity, or not support marine mammal captivity and get all of those captive mammals out into the ocean, right? It's not an easy, for me it's an easy issue because I know a lot about the issue, right? And I have to tell you right off the bat, I am on the side of release captive orcas and dolphins and seals and sea lions and manatees as much as possible. Now, there are times at which I feel that marine mammals should be held in captivity for a certain period of time, and that's if they're sick or injured and need that extra help to get back into the ocean, to get healthy and then get back into the ocean. Not an easy process by any means. This is not this podcast. This is a controversial issue, and I know I'm probably going to get some comments on this. This episode is not to demonize the marine parks or any other institution that has marine mammal captivity. It is a way to help you make the decision for yourself to ensure that you are good with your decision, and to offer you resources that could help make you make that decision, if that makes sense. That will help you make the decision is what I meant to say. And so that's what we're going to be going through today. And it's a really interesting issue that we're dealing with here, because on one hand you have these massive marine animals, from orcas to sea lions to walruses and everything, and you look at them in captivity and they're fun. They look really cool. They are very intelligent. You can tell they've got emotions. They can do really cool tricks and things like that. And when you're a child, when you're a kid, and your parents take you to a marine theme park, you're happy. You're like, this is kind of cool. I get to see marine animals. This is awesome. For someone who grew up in Ontario, where there's a marine park down the road, about 45 minutes away, it was really nice. We didn't go there often, but when we did, it was really nice, and it kind of connected me a little bit towards the ocean, because I was like, I saw these massive animals and I really, really liked them. And in fact, we had them at, when I was a kid, we actually had dolphins and orcas at Canada's Wonderland, which is a big theme park, which is now just roller coasters and stuff. But there used to be an orca and dolphin show, and it was awesome. It was great. It was great to see as a kid. However, the problem is I didn't know what I know now, right? I didn't know back then what I do know now. And if I did, I probably would have told my parents that I don't want to see that. As much as I want to be a marine biologist, as much as I enjoyed seeing animals and ocean water and dolphins and so forth, if I knew then what I knew now, no, I don't think I would. I hope I wouldn't have gone. I know it's hard to say when you're a kid. You get so excited about these things. But, it's a learning process. We're all in a learning process. And I want to go back to, I did this podcast, and I don't know if this episode ever got published, but we were doing a pod. I was teaming up with another group called Octo to do a podcast, and a lot of it was surrounding. We did like a few episodes on orca captivity and how the orcas, the southern resident orca population, how that population was sort of how it became endangered essentially, and a part of that was in the 70s when orcas were being collected for marine parks. And it really started it's a really interesting story because I'll summarize it for you, but essentially it started with people used to be afraid of orcas and demonize them because they ate the fish. They ate the salmon that they were trying to catch. And so there's a news article showing kids, throwing things at these dead orcas that had somehow beached themselves, and they were kind of heralded as brave, right? Because these orcas, these demons, these massive whales with teeth that could eat, flesh, never ate people, but they ate their fish, and they were the enemy, and they had this sort of, they're big and they're fast and they're strong, and so it was easy to say, hey, we don't know a lot about them. And we know that they take our fish, or that we compete with them to take our fish. So let's make an enemy out of them. And then there was a guy who, and I can't remember his name. I wish I could remember his name. There was a guy who was like, you know what? I'm going to catch one, and I'm going to put it in this pen in the ocean. And you're probably thinking like, when you look at these captive orcas, you're probably looking back and you're like, who in their right mind decided that they were going to catch an orca and put it in a pen and swim with it and be in the water with it and, cuddle with it and train it and all that kind of stuff? Who was that first person who was going to do that? And that first person who did it was successful, caught an orca, and it lived in this pen for a good 5-6 years, maybe even more. And he noticed, as he was playing with it, he noticed it, over time, the health degraded and degraded and degraded and degraded, and it died. And after it died, he went into sort of in a hermit state. He didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to talk to anybody. And a reporter actually talked to him, and he said he regretted it because he not only the one good thing about having the orca in his pen is he grew a connection to it. Almost like a familial connection to it. He loved it. He took care of it. He fed it. And he really wanted the best for that animal. And so when it died, it took a part out of him. It took something out of it. And it also said, hey, it's my fault. I'm the one who captured this animal. I'm the one who fed it. I'm the one who didn't know how to take care of it from disease and its overall well-being. And so he stopped right away. He didn't collect another one. But then people, when he collected and he started swimming with it and everything, and he showed that they were friendly, everybody who came by to see the orca enjoyed seeing the orca. And that started to, light bulbs started going off in people's heads. And then in the 70s, they started collecting these orcas, capturing these orcas. And the way they did it was, in fact, quite brutal, as we know now. And nobody really knew it because there weren't cameras. There weren't, it wasn't detailed how they were captured. Maybe a couple photos here and there, to add them to a marine park. But people were excited. They didn't really get the pain that these orcas suffered, not only from actually being scared and stressed of being taken or being chased down, but also being taken away from their pod. And that's, where it really becomes hard. And so since the 70s, we've seen these orcas in these tanks, right? We've seen dolphins in these tanks. In some cases in the Caribbean, we can go swimming with dolphins. And everybody thinks when they go swimming with dolphins, when they go to these marine parks, they think, hey, these animals are healthy, they're being taken care of, right? And the information that's coming from these parks and these swim with dolphins facilities are, hey, we're taking care of them. Here's some information on them. This is why you should love these animals. And so we're kind of hoodwinked in a way. right? And we didn't really know the true devastation that we were having on these animals until recently. Until about early 2010s, a movie came out, two movies came out. One was The Cove and one was Blackfish. And I think The Cove came out first, I think before 2010. And then Blackfish came out. And The Cove was less about orcas and more about dolphins. And if you don't know about The Cove, so let me back up a little bit. I'm giving you a history of how orcas became captured. Dolphins and marine mammals became captured in other ways. And I'm not going to focus on that because we're going to focus on that in just a second when I describe the movie The Cove. But what I want you to do is, with this little information I gave you, I'm going to give you more resources to look at and to learn about these marine mammals. And so I'm going to give you 3 ways, as it says in the title, I'm going to give you 3 ways to help you make a decision on whether you should support captivity or support the release of these orcas and dolphins, and where you allow you to make your own decision on whether you support. Now, I'm going to tell you the next 3 things are biased towards releasing these animals in the wild based on their behavior. Not saying that they're not true facts. They're just biased in the way that it'll give you sort of a lot of the negative ways that, orcas are and dolphins, the effect of being captured. So please keep that in mind. But these are 3 ways that made me rethink the way I thought about captive orcas. Not that I ever really supported them. When I was a kid, I did. I just didn't really know much about them. But I started to change my mind when I actually went to a marine park down the road from me called Marineland. I took my now wife. We were dating at the time. And we went. We were young, just out of university. I didn't know a lot about marine mammal captivity, and we went to see a show. And during that show, a bottlenose dolphin came out of its gate where it was being contained for the show, and it looked like it nicked itself on the gate. It came out a little too quickly. And so from the blowhole, there was blood coming out, and a pretty good amount. And you can hear the concern on the people who are watching, including my now wife and myself. And I remember just like the way they said, oh, the dolphin continue. We assessed the dolphin because they did look at the dolphin during the show. We said that they thought that he can continue, and then, if he didn't continue, he wouldn't like it because it'd stress him out more because it's not a part of his routine, which I don't really buy, but we'll go with that for now. That's what they told us. So from then on, my then wife was like, I don't want to go back to these types of places. I don't want to do it. I don't want to ever see that again. I didn't like it, that kind of stuff. I agreed. We never went back. We never took the kids, and we told them why. And then I started to do more research. I started to look at the issues. I started to talk to more marine mammal scientists. I started who were up to date on the issues, really up to date, really into it. And then The Cove came out. So here's one of the ways that you can learn about captivity, and by watching 2 important documentaries that had to do with whale captivity and a little bit more. So The Cove was that movie that came out with a little bit more. And The Cove is about sort of this secret cove, in Japan, that people wanted to keep secret, where once a year, I believe, for a certain amount of time, there are sort of dolphin hunters, who will corral these dolphins, bottlenose dolphins and all different types of dolphins, into this cove where they can't get out. So they take these little boats, they have nets where they can't get them, and they will actually slaughter many of the dolphins. But before they do that, they choose the dolphins that look the best and look the healthiest, what we'd think what a bottlenose dolphin would look like. And then they take them out, or they separate them from the rest of the pod so that they can be shipped to marine parks around the world. Sometimes it's within the South Pacific, sometimes it's within China, sometimes within other parts of Asia, sometimes it's within, at one point it was the Caribbean, maybe even the US at one point, and even Canada at one point. That's not fun, right? The movie was very stressful. I watched it. I don't even think I ever got to the end because I couldn't watch the end. But it definitely highlights, how the people there are protective of the cove, how they realize that a lot of press on there would be devastating to them, and it was devastating to them. The animals that they do kill, they sell for meat, and they call it for research, but they actually sell it in meat. So they say they use it for research, and the rest they sell it for meat. They say that it's a big thing in Japan. And there are a lot of studies and a lot of things that show that it's not, and it's not as big as everybody expects. And actually, dolphin meat could be unhealthy and so forth. But the concern there, and like one of the concerns was the shipment of these bottlenose dolphins to other marine parks and to other, swim with dolphin parks and things like that. And a lot of people were in an uproar, by the slaughter, because the cove would essentially, the blood and the color of the cove would be blood red by the end of the time. And it was very stressful, very disgusting if you think about it, in the way that they're slaughtered. And it affected a lot of people. That movie brought, not only the meat industry, the marine mammal meat industry, but also the marine mammal captivity industry on point. They made it on point, and they brought it to the forefront of news, and people didn't like it. So you started to see people really affected by this movie. And then in early 2010, or early 2010s, I should say, that decade, CNN put out this movie called Blackfish, and it was just put on TV, and people watched it, and they were in an uproar. And Blackfish is a movie about an orca named Tilikum, who was captured in the wild. And they go over all the captivity and how they were captured and how they were separated from the pod. And this movie documents sort of the Tilikum's history in marine parks, from the wild and in marine parks, and his violent history with trainers. But the movie tells you about a lot of different aspects of the marine trade, but also aspects of how the marine captivity industry has an effect, not only on the physical part of the animal, the physical health, but the emotional and psychological health of the animal. And you see that throughout. And the reason why the movie was made is because it was around this story that Tilikum actually killed a trainer named Don at SeaWorld by drowning. We assume it's by drowning. But the movie goes through some pretty scary stories of other trainers being sort of held and brought underwater by orcas and bitten by orcas and so forth, that were in captivity. But the movie also compares what the animals are like in the wild and how they're affected, how that affects them in the behavior that they have in a tank in captivity. So both of those movies will give you a lot of interesting facts and visuals of what it's like for these marine mammals to be in captivity. So that's the first thing I recommend you do. I recommend you watch it. Now, there trigger warning, some of these images are pretty brutal. And if that affects you, maybe you shouldn't watch it. I still think you should, but maybe you shouldn't watch it. So that's just the warning on there. The second thing is to learn about marine mammals in the wild. The one thing that Blackfish exposed was that the trainers that worked with orcas and dolphins were not marine biologists. They were not scientists. They were trainers, and they loved those animals. I don't doubt it. They had a special bond with those animals, but they didn't know a lot about them. That concerned me. And it exposed a big part of that industry where, if they were asked, or they even admitted, they said they didn't know that orcas, would swim hundreds of kilometers a day and cover wide spans of the ocean of where they lived. They didn't have that idea. They admitted that. Now, I'm not saying every trainer was like that, but these trainers that in that movie definitely are like that. So it's important for you to learn about the lives of orcas, the lives of bottlenose dolphins, sea lions, seals in the ocean, right? And the good and the bad, right? And if you know that, it could help you make a decision on what the captivity could do to them from an emotional and psychological point of view. So there are a lot of resources out there online where you can just find out, sort of what orcas are like in the wild, what marine or what bottlenose dolphins are like in the world, other dolphins are like in the wild, sea lions, seals, manatees, walruses, a lot of marine mammals out there. And I think it's really important that we know what they're like in the wild. We know what their threats are. We know what the benefits are for them to be in the wild compared to captivity, right? And then also look at the history of the health of a lot of these marine parks. Do they have good track records of, for water quality, taking care of the animals? Do they have some that die off? Unfortunately, the marine park that's down the road from me, Marineland, is not good for marine mammal quality and taking care of them. The Humane Society has been called a number of times to do audits to find out what's happening with the water quality. Are the people that are looking after the water quality and the animals themselves, are they looking after the health properly? Are they following the right procedures? Is it a money issue? There's a lot of just different things that go into taking care of these animals. And to know more about what they're like in the wild and what these marine parks are like, in terms of taking care of the animals and their history of that, that's very important. That'll help you understand them more and the effect that it could have, the effect that captivity could have on them. And then you have the last way that'll help you make a decision on whether you should support whale and dolphin captivity or not, is go see marine mammals in the wild. There's nothing better than to come across a marine mammal in the wild, in the ocean. And there are a lot of outfits along the coastlines that will take you to see them. They know where they go. They know where they are at any point in time. There are specific seasons for it. And it's fantastic. It's a great way to be able to see how they behave, see how fast they are, see how curious they are, see how intelligent they are in and around there. Every time you see them, it's something different. It's something different. Even if you look at videos of people's encounters with orcas and dolphins and walruses and manatees, it's always different. And you just never know what behavior you're going to get. It all depends on the individual animal, the species, the pod that they're in, what they're doing at the time, and so forth. And, it's one of those things where the benefit of going to a marine park is that it could be anywhere. There's one in Ontario. So if I want to go see an orca or a dolphin, I could go see it when the park is open. However, should I really have that easy of an access to these things? These things are special. And in order to see them, you should have to go where they live. And they live in the big wide ocean. And we should go see them in the big wide ocean. And so I think it's important that you do go see them. You go see orcas, go see dolphins. There's all these different types of dolphins, different types of whales. Sometimes you'll see humpbacks. Sometimes you'll see gray whales, minke whales. You never know which ones you're going to see out there, depending on where you go and depending on where you live and where you visit. But there are outfits that follow rules and guides and regulations that each country has to ensure that they are making sure they don't impede the animal's progress in migration routes or feeding, or taking care of their other animals in the pod, other whales or dolphins in the pod. And so it's important that you follow the rules and regulations and you purchase from outfits that will take you to go see the whales and dolphins and seals that follow the rules. And that's important. That's truly, truly important. And so those are the three things. Those are the three things that we should be looking at. The last thing I want to say in this, I know I've gone usually longer than normal, but the last thing I want to say about this is there are organizations that are trying to have a habitat ready for these orcas and belugas and dolphins when they are going to be released from captivity. They're still trying to convince, these marine parks to release them. In the US and in Canada, bringing in new marine mammals, I believe it's forbidden offer, like trading their or selling their sperm for reproduction is banned. Shows are supposedly banned according to the law, and you can't grab new animals, can't grab new marine mammals. So it's going to be phased out, and now it's whether those animals are going to be allowed to be released. And it's still an experiment. It's still in the experimental stages, but there are organizations out there that are trying to find sites like in Nova Scotia that will be a good habitat and have the setup for a good habitat for orcas and for a lot of these places. Some people are trying to get them released where these orcas were caught, if they're still alive. And then others who are born in captivity, which there are a lot that are born in captivity, will go to a different site. So that's that. That's the episode. I hope that these resources and sort of tips on how to find information for these resources will help you make that decision. Now, like I said, I want these animals out of captivity, and I don't want new animals in captivity. I don't judge you differently if you are on the opposite side. I just want you to have the information. I want you to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of this industry, because every industry has a good and the bad and the ugly. Let's be honest. And so I want you to be able to make those decisions. And if there are more resources that you think I should point people to, please let me know. You can DM me at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean, all one word. And or you can contact me by email. Just go to speakupforblue.com. That's speakupforblue.com. Hit the contact us link. That goes directly to my personal email. But that's the episode for today. I hope this was helpful as a resource for you in the future. Please let me know and enjoy. And I want to thank you for listening to this episode of How to Protect the Ocean. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.